Hi, everyone. I'm Robbie Jenkins, and this is Breaking Boundaries, a place where we take posing beyond the stage. And today I get to introduce a friend of mine. We connected through Instagram. I'm a veteran now. He's still in the military, and another budding posing physique artist. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Deon Ervans.
What's
Hey,
happening?
what's up?
Another day, just chilling. It's really about it though. Taking it easy.
Yeah.
Today. Yeah,
Is
rest.
it is it good to be home? Because I know you went on you guys had like a field exercise or a training event there for a little bit. So you were out for about a month.
Oh, it's great to be home. Honestly, like just being gone for a month and a half, it felt like forever. Like doing all kinds of like that. I was like, man, I don't know when we're gonna get back. Like, cause they kept pushing the dates back and everything.
Oh no.
Like one day it was supposed to be like the 23rd of February, then it got pushed back to like the 28th, and we're just like, we'll be home when we be home. So
Oh, you gotta love it. It'll be like that.
just got
Well,
do
it's good to finally have you back.
yeah, definitely. It's nice to be home, back with family, and just kind of taking it easy, getting ready to get out and move on to bigger and better things.
Oh yeah. So you're about to make an exit, huh?
Yeah, I'll be done in June.
Oh, I didn't know that part. So are you getting
Yeah.
excited?
Oh, very. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of kind of my out processing stuff and just getting ready
Yeah.
to transition out and start a new job and hopefully take the bodybuilding thing a little bit more seriously now that I have more time.
Yeah. What field are you gonna go into now that you're getting out?
It's still kind of up in the air right now. I'm looking at trying to get a job through the military, but I have to wait like 6 months before I can actually get that job. So
Yeah.
I'm looking at going back to school, and I have a couple options lined up. HVAC, electrical wiring, stuff like that. More kind of
Yeah.
labor work, and then
Yeah.
we'll see where I'm at after like the 6 months to be able to try to get that job through the military.
Okay. So come back and try to be more of a contractor.
Yeah, that's pretty much like that's my goal. I'd like to be able to go to the schoolhouse here and kind of teach my job and like teach new incoming soldiers how to do everything, teach them what I've learned being in like the big army as they call it.
Yeah.
So,
What is it you do again in the military specifically? I don't
so,
think I ever asked.
I'm for MOS, it's 14 Papa, which is air and missile defense. So
Okay.
essentially, our job is just anything that flies we're down. So like missiles, uh, aircraft, whether it be jets, helicopters, things of the sort, drones. So
You
I've never,
said helicopters.
yeah, I've never actually
Ugh.
gotten it myself. Like I've never gotten the opportunity to be deployed, so I didn't get to actually do my job. But like going to NTC for that month and a half of training, it was pretty much the closest thing I got. But I'll take
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
hard when you're in one of those jobs because I flew Apaches for the Army while I was in. So I did that, and then I was an officer. I was like an O grade instead of a warrant officer. So I more often flew a desk and did administrative work. But yeah, when somebody talks about shooting helicopters down, it makes my stomach hurt. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
But I was the same way. We never ended up deploying. Like where I was at, um, they ended up actually turning our unit into like a second schoolhouse because flight school was backed up so bad. Um, so, and yeah, it's not like they're going to let us loose outside of gunneries and go shooting stuff here in the States. So,
Yeah, exactly. If you're not going anywhere overseas, probably most likely just doing a lot of training and a lot of, like you said, administrative work, especially being an
yeah.
officer on your side.
hmm So, usually you hope for like, actually, I don't know. I honestly can't say I don't know. I think it depends on the mind frame I was in because you have like your typical stuff that happens every day and every week. It's like
Right.
relatively boring and monotonous. But then some days you come in and one of your soldiers has done something completely off the wall, and you're just like, oh.
Yep.
So it was like most days it was like let today's work be boring. Like don't let me walk into some story that ends up on like what the fuck moments and have to deal with it.
Yeah. It's
Um,
my unit, like some days, like especially on the long weekends, you're like, man, I really hope we don't come back to work on Tuesday and someone did something crazy. But it's always at least one, especially when you're in a
yep.
bigger unit. Always one.
Yeah. So anyway, I've got you on here to also talk about bodybuilding and more so focusing on even you as a budding physique artist and I guess recent posing coach, right? You decided to.
Uh, yeah, I've been looking at starting like in getting into posing coaching. Still kind of in the works of it on how like I want to do everything, what I want to focus on, because obviously you got your posing coaches that are a lot more well rounded, and that's where I'd like to
Mhm.
be. But I don't personally have a lot of opportunity working with like the women, so pretty much like wellness, like figure, all that. I don't personally know the posing when it comes to that, but when it comes to classic, I've done a little bit of men's physique. So trying to stay in that realm where I do know what I'm doing and then kind of build off of that.
Yeah, I get that. I'm in the same position. I mean, obviously women's physique or even men's classic is kind of like my forte. And
Hmm.
then bodybuilding, women's bodybuilding, it's not really all that different. It's like a couple extra mandatories. And then when it comes to the actual routine, it really just depends on the person. Because with bodybuilding, obviously you got a lot more like closed fists versus open when it comes to
Right.
the women's side of things. Um, but I throw in a little bit of both of those for women. Like you'll see with some of my girls, we've got very open women's physique hands. And then sometimes we hit things and it's like, we're going to hit it like the classic guys and we're going to hit it just as good. Um, but yeah, I'd also like to, I mean, I've got experience with figure. I would like to get into men's physique. Um, I'd like to figure out, I've seen a lot with Chris and a couple other people where they're taking men's physique and even starting to make the presentation there more exciting, which is cool.
Like his presentations are always so good.
Yeah. Yeah. They're absolutely mesmerizing. Like I used to be really bored by men's physique posing. And then I saw him have just like the creativity with it of, oh, like I can actually open this up a little bit and throw some stuff in here to where let's make this a little bit more interesting. Let's make this a little bit more
Right.
artistic. So now I'm like, well, shoot, like maybe if he's doing that with like men's physique, maybe I could figure out how to do that with figure. Like I used to be a figure competitor, so I'm fairly comfortable with that. Um, but yeah, so what got you initially into bodybuilding, and then were you into posing all along, or was there like a moment or a person or something that pushed you more into that realm of it?
So for me, it was really I had just gotten to my newest studio where I'm at currently, and it was really I just kind of went to the gym, the typical like bro split, all that, just lifting to lift, and I'd always seen like posts on like Instagram and everything, of, like people posing, and I always kind of like thought it was interesting, but I never like tried it. And then I
Mhm.
remember gym one day, and there was a older gentleman. His name's Sonny. He is a men's physique competitor, and I just saw him posing one day, and I was like, I'm gonna go talk to him and see like what kind of advice I could get from him, like where I should start with becoming a bodybuilder, essentially. And he he's a very straightforward individual, so he pretty much like told me, he's like, first off, you need to get bigger. And I was like, okay, well, I know that. And he's like, uh if you want, we can kind of go through the poses that I do and see if this is kind of the area you'd like to be in. And I was like, all right. So got through my workout, and we went up to the kind of like the cardio area. They don't necessarily have a posing area at military gyms. So he showed going through all the quarter turns and the front pose, back pose for men's physique, and he was showing me all that. And so I started practicing it on my own, just kind of hitting the poses. And at the start, I had obviously no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to open up my lats, didn't know how to keep my shoulders up, things of the sort. And he'd always kind of critique me anytime he saw me in the gym. He'd be like, okay, like you need to get more lats so you can activate them better. Cause like when I first started, I had no back, like nothing. And so I didn't have the opportunity to like really feel that lat when I tried to push out. And so we just
Yeah.
kept building. And then going back to Instagram, I started seeing more like classic physique, like guys posing. And I was like, oh, let me try that. So I started doing like the Atlas pose, the Icarus pose, because everyone loves the Icarus. Like it's such a
Mhm.
aesthetic, especially when like you got a small waist and a good core and everything. And I just posted like a couple pictures of me doing those poses, and he had commented, he's like, maybe classics more your area. And around this time, I was also looking for a coach so I could actually get like a good like meal plan, get a workout plan that would help me build on the areas that I needed the most work. So the coach I was in the works of working with, he also commented. He's like, "Come to the gym one day and we'll go through some classic posing and see how it fits for you." And showed up that Saturday, and we just worked for like probably about an hour and a half just on different classic poses, and kind of got a base of where I needed to start.
Mhm.
And I kind of just have built off of that, and I've started like getting more creative, trying to build on my transitions, and mostly like mandatories, right? Like for competitions, of course. But I've always been big on like the presentation for the individual presentation and just being real creative. I have a dance background, so
Oh,
it helped me having that dance background because I always liked performing, I guess you could say.
yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, I already know that I have like the flexibility is one of my strengths, so I can hit a lot of different poses in different ways. And so I just kept playing around with the poses, making it kind of my own. And then I'd see different people, like even you, I'd see Chris post videos, Jarek, and obviously Ruff is one of my biggest inspirations. I'd see the
Yeah.
routines. All right, I'm gonna mimic this routine and try to hit it as close as possible to how they've hit it. And sometimes it can be a challenge. I'm not gonna lie. like, like especially like when you guys do your routines that are a lot faster and like harder hitting. That's one of my biggest. Like, you notice a lot of my routines are more slow, methodical. I hit my poses for a little bit longer, and I'm not like, I guess, flying through them. And
Mhm.
pretty much just trying to build on that.
Yeah.
But
No, Jacob and I were talking the other day about different people and different styles, and um, he felt like he grouped Jarek and I together a little bit
yeah,
more. He was like, I feel like with you, he's like, you guys are more emotional posers. And then he's like, then you got people like Killian or Tommy or Killian and Chris, and he's like, they're a lot more fluid, like swimming, like their body's just swimming through water all the time. They're a little bit more slow, but like they can still hit stuff. And then he's like, you got Pete, who's like golden era, kind of whatever. And lately I've been starting to try to play with more stuff because like I know I'm good at some of the harder hitting, like some of the accent pieces and stuff and catching those. But I get stuck real fast from going from one point to the next and not overthinking it. And so now I started taking contemporary dance, I think 8 weeks ago now, just to get used to like feeling my body's momentum just move. And so then take that and then watching like Killian, watching Chris, Emil's another one too. I'll have to send you something he did today that I saw that was awesome.
I'm not sure if I
But
know
they
who.
do, yeah, do you? I had him on the podcast, I think last weekend, and he posted a video yesterday because he has a dance background. He actually, I guess, used to be a break dancer, which is crazy. And then he did all sorts of other stuff, but he's trying to bring the emphasis that classic has back into open.
Okay.
And I watched what he posted. I'm guessing maybe last night, and whew, like the things that he did and the movements he had with his like big as he is, like, it was completely just another level.
Yeah.
So
It's always impressive when like the bigger guys, like the older guys, are able to move so like fluid when they
yeah,
got to like try to
yeah,
keep in an aesthetic way. It's so impressive. Like it's one thing for classic and like other areas, like other divisions, but like open, like if you can move like a classic guy, it looks so good.
yeah, yeah. It's absolutely insane. And so yeah, I'm trying to still play with my strong points, but I'm trying to challenge myself right now to be like, okay, I have this thing. This is what I naturally do. But I also want to make sure that I'm evolving a little bit. So I need to focus on this. This is some of like the weaker things or where I get stuck mentally. So now I've been trying to find stuff to where I can play with that a little bit more.
Yeah, I get that. That's kind of where I've been. Like some of my more recent like videos that I've recorded, I've tried to do more harder hitting, like you said, like the accent pieces and stuff like that, just because it provides a challenge, even if I'm recording it 15, 20 times over until I feel that it's where I want it to be. And like
Mm-hmm.
it gives me that challenge because like I said, like all my usual routines are very slow, fluid, just kind of going through the motions, I guess you could say. And like I hit one pose and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, okay, how can I just naturally flow into another one without, I guess, I guess the, for lack of better terms, like just like the quick jerking movements or like the
Mm-hmm.
hard, like I know that I can do them. It's just I guess the thing of like the instant gratification of like, oh, I just did my routine. Like instead of like, I can work on a routine for longer than a couple hours. Like I could give myself a week and just like really keep working on a routine to perfect it. And I guess for me, I don't necessarily have that patience, and I have to kind of remind myself like it's okay to take time to work on something to get it where you want it to
Yep.
be. It's super challenging at the start because it was the same thing when I was back in dance. Like we'd work for months on a single piece. And I was always like, man, I wish we could just keep working and working and be done with it like the day that we learned it. And
Yeah.
it doesn't work that way. Like if you want it to be as perfect as you want it, like you have to keep like just repetition, repetition over and over until it's basically just second nature to do that movement or that piece or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm working on something like that now. It started out as like started out as something fun. There were a couple different pieces in the song that were cool, but it's got like a really good amount of beats. So if I still want to hit some like the harder, edgier kind of things, I can do it. And it's a very emotive song. But it also has so much room because it is slower and like the guitar and stuff in it is so smooth and a lot of the musical side of it is very smooth. Um, that you can play with both, like all of
Yeah,
those elements. And I go through the same thing because I get excited when I hear a song, and this hasn't happened to me in a while. And I think maybe this is just like the creative spirit trying to teach me a lesson, like patience,
right.
because it's not one that I have. But like I would get excited being in the shower, or sometimes I'd be brushing my teeth, and I'd be listening to a song, and by the time I was done, I pretty much had a routine built in my head.
Yep.
Go to the studio, work on it for an hour, fix and tweak a few things, and then boom, it was done. And this one, it's like 15 to 20 seconds of a song. I might be spending like a whole entire hour on, or like playing with, or playing it through, because I'm going from being jerky 1 minute to then being very like smooth and contemporary flowing 1 minute back into something else. And it's making me work for it, man. And I just want it to be done.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Like when you're, like you said, transitioning from kind of slow and fluid to the more, like you said, edgier, harder hitting movements, it's kind of a challenge because like you got to figure out how can I flow into hitting something harder and then back again and stuff like that.
Yep.
Like I really think on like I I would say Jarek is probably one of the like more like I don't even know what the word I want to say. Like he's very good at doing that from like the routines I've seen. He can move like so quickly to like and transition to another pose and like hit it hard, but then he like transitions slow the next one and then just kind of falls into the next pose and it's just like how like for me it's still like blowing because it like looks so simple when he does it and same with like the other guys like I'm probably gonna pronounce it. I never can pronounce his name right. What was it Killian? Is that
Yeah. Yeah.
like movements? He's just so like I take a lot of inspiration from him because he's so slow and methodical with everything, like you were saying, and same with Chris. But then Chris can also turn around and surprise you with like a harder hitting move, like song, like a lot of the Tommy Prophet songs when he does,
Mm-hmm.
or was it Two Way?
Yep.
Yeah, like when he uses those songs for his like pieces and stuff like that, it's so exciting to see what he comes up with because it's always something different and it's always so fresh.
Yep. Yeah. Chris is just, I feel like he's just a prodigy. I mean, he's worked forever. Like he's been doing this, I think at least 10 years now, as far as the posing. So like he's put in time and effort, of course, to get
Yeah,
where he's at. But man, I've never seen somebody just seem to naturally come up with just so much. Like I don't know, like he just moves his arm a certain way and it goes into something, and it's like how did you do that? Like it doesn't even look like you even thought about it. You're just like, well, I'll just move this way, and then it somehow worked. It's like
back.
how do I get there?
No, I love it though.
Same, same. So what do you feel like? They could be like past challenges, or I mean, it could even be stuff currently. But what do you feel like are probably some of the biggest creative challenges that you have or had?
Uh, I think my biggest creative challenges would really be just like making a story out of the routines. Like a lot of the time, I'm just kind of, all right, this post fits here, this one goes here, and I more recently I've tried to like really listen to what the songs are saying and
Mm-hmm.
mimic that with my movement. Like if it's talking about like reaching to the sky or reaching to the ground, like trying to find either a pose or transition that mimics that, and then kind of just building off of that depending on the lyrics, and then if it's a song that doesn't necessarily have so many lyrics, but more just like the beats and whatever instruments are in the background, that one's another big challenge because you don't have the lyrics to build off of. So you don't have like the song saying, oh, like you're reaching to the sky. So like, all right, I'm gonna do a pose where I'm reaching to the sky or something like that. And uh just kind of playing with that creativity more instead of just going through the motions. Like I keep saying, like it's really hard for me to like keep focused on that. Like I said, like going
Hmm.
back to like rushing through the routines, rushing through the creative process at times. I'm like, let me just
Yeah.
get this. Like, okay, let me pause for a second. Let me focus on these 15 seconds of lyrics. What is it saying, and how can I portray that with my movements? Another challenge I would say is really just when it comes to the harder hitting movements and like routines, the hitting the poses clean, but still hitting them
Um,
fast. Because like as we
mhm.
all know, the faster you're moving, you're not thinking about the execution of the pose as much because you're just trying to get there. And like if it's even a side chest, like I'll find myself shrugging up my traps more, or if it's like a back double by, I'm like pinching my traps together too much instead of opening up and still hitting the pose clean while making it flow with the song. Those really been my biggest challenges as of right now, but I'm sure there's a lot more that I'm not currently thinking of.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as far as building stories, I think my biggest piece of advice. So when I got really into it, I mean, I was into it to this point because I was posing all the time. So when I started, um, like I started with Jarek's posing challenges. That's what got me into it. And then I was practicing constantly. Even if I couldn't physically do it, if I was driving somewhere in my head, I kid you not, there would be sometimes I would drive home and it would be an 8 or 10 hour drive to go back to see my parents and people from where I grew up. And I would have music playing the whole entire drive, and almost the whole entire time I was thinking about movements and different poses and what I was doing. And so I went from that to like copying other routines. And then I think the first time I was is probably 4 or 5 months into posing where I started building up a story. I think the second or third like routine that I did. So I started pulling and it just kind of naturally gravitated toward doing this. But instead of using the song as telling its story, I used the song to tell something that's my story. So one of the first ones that I did was, I think it was Tommy Prophet had covered a Creed song. I think it was My Sacrifice. And
Okay.
so, yeah. So one of the memories that I had as a kid, and I mean, even something to this day, um, I wouldn't say that I struggle with, but it's something like still very near and dear. But like I was supposed to have a full-blooded younger sister. So like I come from a family where I have a couple half brothers and a couple half sisters. But then I'm the youngest one that kind of bridges the two. It feels kind of like the Brady Bunch sometimes. Um, but yeah, but when I was 10, like I remember coming home and I feel like a few years before this, I had told my parents I wanted a sister. My mom's like, no, like, I'm too old. Well, if you like sometime after that, I come home from school and like my mom's sitting on the couch and my dad's standing up and they're both just kind of looking at me and I'm like, what's going on? Well, it turned out my mom was pregnant. And so I was gonna have a sister. And I think it was her last checkup, or it was like right around when they were going to induce her. So she was supposed to be born in October, and it was literally right around that date. My mom had went into the doctor, and like they couldn't find a heartbeat. And so they sent my mom in, and what had happened was my sister got wrapped in the umbilical cord, and so like they didn't get her out in time. And for me as a kid, that was a really hard loss because it was something to where I was going to share. One, I got the chance to be the big sister. Um, and it was something that I always wanted to do, is always have like a younger sibling and then watch her grow up. And then it was sharing the same family dynamic with another person. Like she would fully get it. And so losing that was really hard. And I carried that for a long time. And with my family, like obviously my mom was really hurt by it. And like she couldn't talk about it. Like she couldn't talk about it for the longest time. And it wasn't until I think I got out of rehab in 2020 that got brought up. And like I had never allowed myself to process it, because I had learned, like, well, we don't talk about it. We just shove it and move on like it never happened. And there were still parts of me that were like really hurt by it. So when I heard this song, it made me think about her. And so instead of just thinking about what the lyrics said, it was about, how does this resonate with me? Like, how does this make me feel? What does this make me think about her? And then I used that to tell a story. So even if there wasn't a specific lyric that matched up, there was a feeling or an emotion that I had, and then I could still portray that instead. And so I think that was actually the first routine. I thought it was Love Hate Letter to Alcohol, but now that I think about it, that was my first routine where I used an experience to actually build it. So if you're trying to, and they don't always have to be like these sad traumatic events, but
Right.
sometimes it's almost easier to pull, I think, because it's easy to be happy and easy to be carefree, and it's a lot harder. Like we work a lot harder to push away from negative emotions and negative events. So it's a lot harder to bring some of those up, but it's also easier to experience them when we do. Um,
Right.
so I'd say that would be a big one. And I mean, it takes a lot of courage to do it, but think back to some different times that were like near and dear to you. Like I said, it doesn't have to be sad, but it could even be happy. It can be either one. And then try to pull from that. Like if there's a song that makes you think of a certain memory, roll with that memory. Like let the song and that memory work together, and then use your body to tell it.
I'll have to definitely give that a shot, because there's definitely been a lot of different moments in my life that would like, I don't want to say, I don't necessarily want to speak for other people, but I feel like they would speak to people, like kind of
Mm-hmm.
up, opening up about them, and just expressing, like, whether, like you said, if it was some type of pain, hurt. Because I feel like, like you said, like it's easier to be happy, carefree, but I think, at least in this day and age, and it's kind of sad to say, but like people connect more to like the sadder stories, the harder ones that were like hard for people at that time, whatever it may be. People kind of can connect to that, because it's not always like, we like to think like the stuff that we deal with is just us, but then you come to find out that there's how many people in the world that have dealt with the same scenario,
Mm-hmm.
and so people can really connect to that, and it kind of pulls at the heartstrings for certain people. And I think that was probably like the biggest thing, like but like you said though, it's just getting that courage to kind of bring that back up, because I'm definitely one of those people, I'll bottle stuff in very,
Yep.
very easy, and I've been trying to work on it, and like honestly that would probably be a good way to like, I don't know, it's not necessarily dealing with it, but like, I guess using it to a strength instead of a weakness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would challenge the thought of um, saying it might not be a way to deal with it, because for me, in my whole journey with posing, the majority of the hard things that I've worked through, I worked through them when I was building routines. And I'm somebody, like, I've been in therapy for years. I'll keep going, whether it's once a week or once a month, just depending on where I'm at the time. But that was what really started for me unlocking a lot of things, because even though I was repressing stuff on some subconscious level, my body was still feeling all of it. Like it was still feeling the sadness and it was still feeling the frustration or the anger or the regret or so. And I think that's why people connect to it so much. I don't think because there's tons of funny, goofy videos out and people really enjoy them. But I
Right.
think it's because we get so isolated feeling when we're feeling negative that we forget, oh, this is normal. Like other people have felt this and experienced this too. So I don't think it's that they connect more to it. I think there's just more of like a hunger for connection in that way because we all, for some reason, feel like we can't connect like that. Like there's some taboo, like people can't grieve together, people can't be sad together, people can't be embarrassed together. Like if we can be happy together, we can do all these other things together too. Like emotional healing wasn't supposed to be a one person event. And that's why usually if you're bottling and suppressing all of it up, you never actually truly heal from it. It's not until you take that to somebody else. But that's just kind of my take on it.
I would agree. I really would agree with that. It's just one of those things. Like, uh, from my perspective, um, yeah, I'm sorry. I really just lost my train of thought of what I was about to
You're
say.
good. You're good.
Whole thing I was about to say, and I just lost all of it. If it goes
You're
back,
good. Yeah, it'll come back. If it comes back, we'll come back to it.
like I said, it was right there, and it just stopped. So,
It happens. um, so what do you feel like? Something I ask a lot of people on here. Do you feel like you've experienced this yet? But is there a certain thing that you did, either whether it was a routine that you created or a flow that you hit or somebody else's routine that you did or anything like that? Has there ever been an event since you started posing where like you've hit it and it's like you felt something in your brain click and you're like, holy crap, like I just leveled up. Like I've never done something like that and I just feel like something unlocked.
yeah, definitely. For me, it's the routine I did of Ruff's. It was his. What was it? I'm trying to remember the song. I think it was the Warriors routine. Is what it was, and just being able to hit the poses the way he did, because I copied the routine pose for pose, like, but
Yeah.
I give him his credit, of course, but uh it was cool because he actually commented and liked it, and like seeing someone of that caliber
Mm-hmm.
recognize the fact that like me, little old me, was able to hit a routine that it was, in my words, in like in my opinion, I would say it was pretty challenging based off how many times I had to keep practicing it and to hit everything. But seeing someone just even liking it and like taking notice of how it was executed, because a lot of people will try to do like other people's routines and they don't hit them the way that they're envisioned, and
Mm-hmm.
it could be big. I don't want to say let down, but it could be like, okay, this is how the routine is supposed to look, but then you did it this way. But being able to do it in a way that Ruff noticed, and it just really like it brought my motivation like it's sky, because I was like, okay, he noticed, and obviously I'm doing something right when it comes to this
Yeah.
posing stuff. And from there, it was just like, okay, I'm just gonna keep building and building and working on my different flows and trying to improve to keep getting that recognition. Not so much for the popularity, I guess, but just
Mm-hmm.
like, I guess the satisfaction of like, okay, I'm doing something that's inspiring people, and they want to kind of do as I did and
Yep.
copy the ones that I do that are created from my mind. And then when you see people like either messaging you or like, hey, can you critique my routine? Or hey, can you build a routine for me and stuff like that? Like it's so motivating, because then you know like you're really making a name for yourself, and kind of grabbing other people's attention, because you're doing
Yeah.
something that is, whether it's inspiring, creative, or just motivational. So like that was probably my biggest like motivation when it came to posing, because I was like, I'm just gonna work on this. And I think I worked on it for like 2-3 hours, and I just kept running through it, trying to hit it. And whenever I finally got it done and I sat down and I watched it, I was like, that's the one. That's the one. That is the routine. That routine out of all the routines I've done. And honestly, like I try not to think of it as like my peak because I always want to keep improving. But I feel like that was probably one of my highest points, and I have kind of come down. And I just want to get to another point where, like, okay, how can I surpass that and improve even more than doing that routine?
Yeah. So there's a book. I'll actually mention it on here. So I just started this. I guess Tuesday night. Technically, I got it Monday. I think I started reading it Tuesday and then doing the exercises Wednesday. But I got this book, and it's actually a 12-week study. And so I'm using it both for posing and then also because I've started painting the last couple months. But it's called, put up here.
The Artist's Way. Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, it's cool because it's a 12-week thing. So you read a chapter every week, but she gives you things that you have to do daily. And then she'll give you like a list of things to do. You don't have to do all of them, but she was like, either pick the ones that you're the most excited about or give you like the biggest sense of dread. She was like, pull from one of those, because if you're really excited about it, you're going to want to do it. And if you're really dreading something, chances are that's what you need to do the most.
Yeah.
Of like all of them. And so she was like, try to pick those. And then if you get more time, you can gravitate to the stuff that falls somewhere in the middle. But she talks about like creative blocks, because I feel the same way. I feel like there was a couple of routines that I did last fall toward the end of my prep. I felt like my Olympia routine was really personal and like really, really good. And then I feel like there was a couple of routines that I filmed, especially there was one that I did to a rock song called You Don't Know What Love Means. And I feel like that one was probably one of my best ones too. And since then, I feel like, man, like I can't create anything near that good. Like, what is going on? And then there is like this complete just decline in your head, because then you start thinking like that, and then you go to pose, and then you start thinking about every single movement needs to be going into something, and then it doesn't, and then you're mad, and the next thing you know, you don't pose for 3 weeks.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep. So I got this book, and she has a lot of things in there where it talks about artist blocks and when you're working through process. And she talks a lot about process and how as you're getting better at something, you can't expect to be good as you're getting better. Because like that's the whole point of getting better. So she's got things like I wrote on my easel, like it's okay to be bad at this as long as you're learning. And so like I started painting a photo that I took in Sydney. And so I plopped that like way big up onto like my easel. So that way when I'd start getting frustrated, I could look back up at it and then I'd see like it's okay to be bad at this. Like you're learning, just keep doing it. And I've been doing the same thing with posing because I've been going in and working on stuff. And I might jump around songs a little bit if I start to get bored, but then there's one that I really want to do. So I'll come back to it and then get to like a certain level of frustration, let it go. And then usually too, what I've learned, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but you'll film something and when you're frustrated and you watch it back, you're like, this was garbage. But then if you give it 3 hours after you've calmed down and then you look back at it and you're like, oh, this actually isn't garbage. Like this isn't as bad as I thought it was. Have you
Yeah.
experienced that?
All the time. Like I'll sit there and because I record everything. Like when I go into the posing area to pose, like I just hit record everything just because I might find something that I can use for a later routine, whether it just be a movement when I'm messing around with movements or an actual routine that I'm working on. And I'll just keep recording over and over. And then I'll go through and I'll like watch like the first video and be like, that was terrible. and then like the second video and so on and so forth. And I'll have like 10 videos of the same routine, and I'll watch all the bad ones first, and I'll just get mad, and I'll just like, all right, let me put the phone down because I can't keep watching. This is terrible. And then I'll go and do whatever for a little while, and then I'll come back, and then I'll finally like, all right, let me look through these again, and I'll be like, actually, you know what? I can work with this. Like, it's not that bad, or I just need to make these tweaks next time I work on it, or whatever it may be. But the amount of times, like, and I hate it because I've done some routines that I really end up liking, but I've gotten so mad that I'll just straight up delete them right then and there. And
No.
I'll delete them from the phone, and I'll delete them from like recently deleted, and they'll just be gone. And I'm like, man, I should have kept that because actually that was pretty good, and I just needed to build on it. Now I don't remember how I did the routine, and it'd be so frustrating. But like, I also tried not to let myself get so caught up on certain routines because, like I said, like I'll get so frustrated with just watching how they went, and I won't be happy with it, and I'll just like, no, I can't keep looking at this. I'm just gonna make myself mad, and that's why I'll delete them. But then, like I said, there's a few times where I'll delete it and then I'll regret deleting it.
Mm-hmm.
So it happens all the time. Where like you just gotta either put the phone down before you do something drastic like deleting the whole video, or and then take your time, cool off, and then come back to it and be like, all right, this is actually pretty good.
Yeah, I might have to actually write that down for and like put on like my bag or something for when I go posing is like take a break. Like don't like make it a ritual to not rewatch the film immediately.
Yeah,
Like go record it, then give yourself a break and then go back and watch it. Cause even stuff that you might think is bad, it's because you're looking for something specific. But I've found this too. Like I'll get super mad at a clip that I did because I didn't hit something specifically. But then if I look back at it after I calm down, like I see something that wasn't there before. So it was like, oh, like maybe I should have deleted this altogether, but this would have got into this really well. And now it's like I can visualize things that aren't there. But when you're so mad and frustrated that the thing you wanted didn't come out right, it doesn't give you opportunity to see things that could be. I
right.
guess is
Yeah.
the way,
Yes.
to say it.
Vision of like, okay, did I hit this pose right? And you're not paying attention to any of the other poses that you hit, and you'll be so focused on that one. You'll be like, man, my foot was up too high, or my heel's still not where it needs to be, or something like that. And then the rest of the routine is flawless. And like, obviously, we know like it takes a lot to get to that like flawless
Mhm.
like level, but a lot of the time, like you said, we'll be so focused on the negative side of it, we won't look at the positive and be like, okay, I didn't hit that right, but I did do these movements really well, and I can work with these and just build off of those.
Yeah, no, exactly. I completely agree with that. What would you say for you? What would you say for you is probably the biggest piece of key advice for people wanting to get into posing or just starting?
Uh, I think the biggest like advice I could give, and a lot of people will hear this, is mandatories, mandatories, because I've, especially like if you're someone that, even if like you're trying to compete, not so much on the artistic side, like once you get the mandatories down, you can start building off of those and make them more creative and make them your own. Like even if it's a regular side chest, you hit a side chest. Okay, how do you make it your own? Okay, kneel down to the floor, make it a kneeling side chest, or the front double. Like we know that like there's different ways you can hit that instead of just like the regular classic way, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it may be. I think those are the biggest things you need to focus on, and then build off of the mandatories to create certain routines. Because I would say pretty much every pose comes from a mandatory, and it's just a slight alteration.
Yep. That was what I was telling both of my clients today. So I've got one who I created a Star Wars theme routine for him. Um, but today we had to finish up mandatory. Is like he had already started looking at his routine, and I think the first 4 or 5 poses I put in, because he's a beginner, like he's pretty new. So the first, I think 4 or 5 poses I hit, his feet don't move. It's like we get that foot placement, and then it's all basically just your arms and maybe slightly moving the torso, but trying to keep it to where it's flowing but easy. But I told him today, I was like, we have to make sure we nail these first. And I was like, the thing is if you understand these, you're gonna understand everything else, because I was like, it's not really all that different pose to pose. Or if you end up creating something new entirely, the same concepts of what you want to look for if you create a completely new pose, like you're gonna know. Like you're gonna look for balance, you're gonna look for straight lines, or um, you're gonna know that you need to keep like your chest up if you're facing forward, and you need to keep your arms scooped under you so like your lats are showing and they're not hidden. And so it's like if you are learning all of these in the basic poses, then it's when you go to do something different, it's like, oh, this still applies here. Like this is what I'm
Right.
looking for. Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
a lot of people are so quick to like competitors are so quick to jump to the routine and they just want to do something creative, and that's great. Like if you have
Mhm.
that creative mindset and you want to just like make something that's you view as art, that's fantastic. But you got to know how to hit the main poses before you can do anything super creative, because if you're not hitting those right, chances are you're probably not hitting the creative poses right either.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you're not hitting them ideally. Like
Yeah,
you're not hitting them
way
in
to
the
put
best way you can.
yeah, that's probably the better way to put it. Not necessarily hitting them right, because everyone poses different. Like people are gonna hit
Mhm.
a side differently. Like I know some people they have their hand more like kind of like this, and then I have to have my hand like this to be able to get the activation in my arm. So like it
Yep.
really just on the person. So like I would say ideally is a better word instead of saying hitting it right.
Yeah. Um, and then I think the thing that I always like to end on, I can't, we're actually already at 50 minutes, I think is
Oh
what that
wow.
says. Yeah, that flew, that went so fast. Um, so one of my biggest goals with this podcast, and even just is with my own posing coaching and collaborating, I'm really trying to help grow the community on more of a global scale, to people get kind of an awareness of what people are doing all over the place. But what do you feel like are some of the good things that you see that you feel like is really bringing posing into more of a communal aspect? And then what are some things you would still like to see or you think would be helpful to continue to build it and really transcend it? Because um, I think personally that posing could eventually become its own thing, to where you still obviously you have to come in with a physique and you have to come in conditioned, or you're not going to be able to show it for what it is, but to where it almost becomes its own like competition or entertainment source.
Right. Sorry. The first what was the first question you would ask? That way I can touch on that one and then I'll
So the first one is, what are some of the things that you're currently seeing that you feel like is really helping grow the communal aspect of posing?
so for me, I think the biggest thing I see is the top guys like Urs, Ramon, even Chris, like they're having fun with the posing. And I think that's showing people like you can still have fun with it and be creative. Like,
Mm-hmm.
or he was it last year's Arnold when he did like his little like breakdancing stuff. I
I
can't
don't know if
remember.
I don't even know if I saw it. I don't even think I watched the Arnold last year, but now I'm curious.
It wasn't this year. I think it was last year. He basically did like a what do you call him? like a b-boy like shuffle, I think it's called. Like he broke down and started doing the worm, and that's not necessarily posing, but he's showing like you can have fun with it and kind of mess around because like even though it's not necessarily it's not a pose, like it's still showing some of the
Yeah.
his physique. Like when he was doing that, like you could see like the engagement in his quads and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, that's kind of creative. Like he's having fun with it, but he's still showing some kind of strong points. If you
Yeah.
know, it's like everyday people don't see that. Oh, he's just dancing on stage. And even people that bodybuild and pose, like, oh, he's just goofing off, whatever. He's just trying to win the crowd over. But like for me, I guess I look at it differently, and I see he's still showing, okay, when I land on my leg like this, like it's engaging the quad, so like, you can see all my striations, everything like that. And maybe I'm reading into it too much. Maybe he was just messing around, but like that's how I look at it. And then like I think when you have people that are new to it and seeing like the top guys have fun with the posing, people that are new to the air like bodybuilding and posing, they it kind of gives them almost like a sigh of relief of like, okay, I don't have to be so uptight and strict about it, and I can have fun, be creative with my routines and being on stage. That's really the biggest thing I've noticed. Uh, but I can't really think of anything else that comes to mind.
Okay. So then, second question: what do you think are some things that could happen? And it could be events, stuff you see professionals do. It could be stuff at the amateur level. It could be stuff like us, like just anything. What do you think
So
are things that probably could be done?
So I have I've already spoke to you. Well, not spoke to you, but I've commented on your video about this. Like, I really think it would be possible to have competitions where it's not so much the physique that is the strong point, but the posing and the artistic ability of the poser being put at the forefront. Like you said, like of course you got to be conditioned, you got to bring in a good physique to be able to present it well. But I don't think
Yeah.
that that's main criteria, like because
Yeah.
as we see people in their off season, like when they're not super conditioned, they still practice their posing and they still flow extremely well. I mean, bringing him up again, like Chris, like he's been in a what year long off season, and
Mm-hmm.
he's
At least.
eyes, but he still flows so well. And like I can't imagine with like seeing that with a conditioned physique, how much better it would look. And like seeing the striations and everything, because that at the end of the day, that is what makes the poses look that much better is like seeing the definition, seeing the different lines, the angles, stuff like that. But having like a set competition where everyone just shows up and you put on your best like posing routine, and it's just that it's just the posing routine, like no mandatories or quarter turns anything like that, almost like a dance recital.
Yeah.
And they kind of they would have to figure out, I don't know how they would do the drudging criteria necessarily. I don't know if it have to be like based off like creativity as well as like crowd control, I guess is the word, like how much you can get the crowd into it but like still being in a routine, because obviously everyone can just like walk around stage and like pump up the crowd and all that, but like if you can keep the crowd interested and they're not just like sitting there just bored, like, oh, here's another routine. Because I think that happens a lot of the times, even with like classic, because you got the guys that they still look phenomenal but they're just kind of going through the classic poses and just here's a quarter turn, all right, here's a side chest, quarter turn, back double by. And when you have people that are more creative, like Rough, now I'm blanking on people, but mainly Rough, like just being creative with the movements and the flow, but still kind of like telling a story with the song, or
Mm-hmm.
even with your movements and like working hand to hand. I think those would be one of the biggest things that could happen. And it might take a couple years down, get something like that started. Like, but I think it's very doable, and I would love to see that honestly, because like I said, we already have dance recitals, and pretty much as long as you know how to have the training to do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah.
So I feel like the same thing can be posing. You just need the proper training, and then get your physique where you want it to be. You don't have to come in like bodybuilding conditioned, but come in pretty conditioned. That way you can present it well, and then have somebody make a judging criteria and go from there.
I love it. I think you're like the third person so far that on the podcast, like we've talked about this, and then even the guys that I've had on like off the podcast, we've talked about this. So I think it would be a really cool thing. I think it's something very likely to happen in the future. I don't think it'll be too far off.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think so either. I think as long as we keep having people coming up in like the IFBBs and like even the natural bodybuilding world, like where I'm at, like having the more creative routines and like seeing that put at the forefront, I think that's going to be a big help, and not so much like just like you said, if you see just kind of the basic poses constantly, people are going to be like, okay, here's a regular pose, whatever. But then like when you're flowing through the music and just making the poses look seamless, it makes it that much better and creative, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you again for giving me some of your time to come on here and so we could talk about something that we love. And then not to mention, I think this is the first time I've talked to you face to face too. So
Really, no, I've been excited about this. Like I've been thinking about it because as soon as I saw you were doing it, I was like, man, I really hope she asked me to be on this. Like that'd be so cool. Like just to like get a different perspective on like the world of posing from somebody else that's so passionate about it. It's like when you message me, I'm like, yes.
well, good. I'm glad you're excited about it. Yeah, I knew as soon as I started it, I kind of had a list in my head of people that I was going to try to ask to get things jump started. And I mean, you were easily one of the first people to come up too. So I feel like I had a pretty wide list of people from some of the pros to some of the amateurs, and so yeah, there wasn't a second where I was like, oh, this isn't happening. Like I knew from the get go.
No, that's awesome. Like I'm excited to see where you take all of this and like where it kind of leads to, especially like if you can start talking to more of the pros, and then obviously bringing in like more lesser known people and just getting that perspective as well, because the pros might have like something, I mean they've been doing it for years, so they might have something kind of like drilled in their head, and like they kind of all, but when you get someone lesser known, they might have a different perspective and think, oh, what
Yeah.
if we did, or what if we changed this about posing? So like it's really exciting to see like the different conversations and who you're going to talk to in the future.
Yeah. So no, this was a lot of fun. Thanks, man. I seriously I appreciate it. Before I hit end on the record button, do you want to let people know where they can find you?
Are you referring to like Instagram, stuff like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, give
So
them your personal address and telephone number.
if they want to show up and hey, have a conversation, sure. What's it that I have a cup of coffee or something? No. No, yeah. My Instagram is sterlingworks underscore. You can find a lot of my posing routines on there, as well as some workout videos for the people that are strictly about that. And then Facebook, just my name, Deon Ervans. First name Deon, last name Ervans.
All right. Well, thanks again. And I guess that concludes another episode of Breaking Boundaries. So
Having me.
till next time.